What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Leicester have just beaten Brentford at their ground in the FA Cup 3-1. Alex, for once, it's snowing in England compared to Canada, and you probably saw from the pitch today as well. What are your thoughts on the team performance today?
I was pretty happy. First half was a little concerning. It seemed like we were really lacking, just all together. It seemed, and we gave up a goal on a set piece, which is something that we've been talking about for weeks. It seems at this point. But in the second half, they really came out and delivered, and really showcased what they have and what they really can bring to the table. And and with a 3-1 victory, it's great to see.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. It's just coming into the first half, it kind of reminded me how Chelsea was in the full 90 minutes. It was like there was no players were there, individual sparks of brilliance, but the team wasn't really clicking. And what was brilliant is that Brendan Rodgers got them in, kicked them up the arse a little bit, and go, right, get out there and prove to me that you deserve to win the match. And they did so. But I think first of all, where to start is when you saw that starting lineup. I mean, no Nacho in that starting lineup, but I don't think it's neither of us were surprised, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like his future is here, does it?
No, and you know what? If there was a game for Nacho to get into the starting 11, this would be the game, especially with Vardy being out for at least 2 weeks. If Rodgers was going to give him the opportunity to prove himself, this would be the game to do so. And with Rodgers choosing to go with Perez over Nacho, I think it's pretty clear to say that he's completely fallen out of favor within the club. And I think they're going to move on from him. It's time will tell at this point.
Yeah, it's just going to be one of those situations where we'll have to just wait it out, and potentially we could see him going in the summer as well, just because of he's again, there's flashes of brilliance, but it's not seeming to work. I think we'll get onto in a bit, but from the first 5 minutes, it actually looked quite positive. We'll speak about the first half, and it wasn't too good, but I think a lot of these players, apart from the people that were starting in the main 11, were looking to knock on the door. Players like players like Ricardo, even players like I would say even Soyuncu and Amati as well. But at the beginning, it was a little bit disjointed, but I think for the first 5-10 minutes really shone.
Yeah, and I think that's a positive thing that you need to look at. He's been battling injury and he's been trying to crack this starting 11, which he seems like, on most days you would think that he could do it. But with how Albrighton's been playing of late, it's there's no chance for him right now. So realistically, I was quite happy and quite pleased with how he performed today all around. In the first 10 minutes, he really was showing that he was bringing his A game. And he capitalized off a lot of opportunities, and he ended up scoring in the second half, which is great. But I think that's just another key thing to look at, is that you have a player in under who, if anything does go wrong with Albrighton or Barnes, you have that player, that winger that's going to be ready to slot in. And I think seeing that hunger and seeing that drive from these players that are almost there, almost ready to crack that starting 11, but they're not there yet because someone is playing better than them. Healthy competition, there's nothing better than that, because you're going to better each other in the end.
Yeah, I totally agree. Another player that I thought in the beginning didn't have too much of a good time, but in the second half again was Luke Thomas. I mean, at the beginning, with his touch was a bit off, he was running things out, but towards the end of the game, he really grew into it. And that, I think we've talked about it before. I think at the Athens game, where his link up with Barnes was incredible, and the fact that them two can really form a solid partnership. Now, again, it's the same problem with Ricardo. He's not going to get ahead of Justin or Castagna. I think that's just a bit obvious. However, I think he's knocking on the door to go, look, manager, I'm here. I can do a job with this player, and you will play them. And again, some of the touches he was doing was really impressive for a 19-year-old.
Yeah, and I think you have to applaud the fact that he hasn't got into the starting lineup or on the bench for quite some time. So for Rodgers to be like, hey, you're in today, you're starting, and him really coming out and just being like, I'm going to do what I can, and really delivering on that is something that's really good to see, because like I said, you have these players that are coming up through the system that are hungry and they want those minutes. And when they do get those minutes, they're going to do whatever they can in order to, get more minutes. And like you said, the link up between him and Barnes, it's quite impressive for the amount that they've played together. Um, and moving forward, I think it's just going to create another healthy competition, for these young players to, challenge some of the older players to be like, hey, I'm knocking on the door. I want to, I want playing time. You need to keep playing well, or I might take over and, steal your role.
Yeah, and especially since we have Prague coming up, I know it's a bit different in the round of 32, but these players are really driving for that position. It's something that we kind of talked about for the 1-1 against Crystal Palace, how nobody really, apart from Marty and I think Mendy as well, nobody really stood out and goes, right, I'm knocking on the door and I'm going to hold down that position. But it's brilliant at the same time to see that was the case. Well, again, there was a couple of great saves by Ward, but I want to in the first half, but there wasn't really too much to talk about. So I want to go on to kind of the team talk. Obviously, we weren't there, but from the first second, I want to even say the first minute because we scored in the first minute. But from the first second of that kickoff, there was an intensity of like, right, lads, we're 1-0 down. Let's go and get these goals and let's put Brentford out of our sight because it was one of them teams like Stoke. You turn up to Leicester to our 80-90%. And the other team just can't keep up. And again, credit to Brentford because they were a very good side in my opinion. And I'd like to see them come up to the Championship, to the Premiership. But again, once that dial gets turned up to like an 80-90%, they just couldn't keep up.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder that if Leicester, they look at a team and they're like, oh, this team's in the Championship. We really don't have to bring our A game. We can maybe give up 75% of effort, and most of the time, there's more of like the shocking realization that they're like, oh wait, just because they're in the Championship doesn't mean that they're not a good team. I believe Brentford's in fourth place in the Championship, so like they're knocking on the door to the Premier League. But like you said, I think Rodgers kind of gave him a kick in the ass during halftime and said, stop playing as if you're cocky. Your cockiness really has caused us to be down 1-0. Go out that second half and deliver. And like you said, you turn that notch just a little bit more. And Leicester really does change. Their side and their quality of play completely changes, and it really separates, Leicester City from a lot of teams. Not only does it separate them, from teams in the Championship, but it really separates them from teams in the Premier League as well.
That was going to be my point as well. The fact that this is what you'd expect from somebody like Chelsea back in the day, or another top 6, top 4 team where they'd come to your ground and they go, right, we just need to win this game. Let me just knock this a bit out and then kind of ease off the pressure because we scored in the 46th minute with that under goal and then the 51st minute with Yuri Tillemans. But just for that Cengiz under goal, I think a lot of praise needs to be given to Maddison as well. The way that he's not a big physical player. He's got technique and he battled through a few players, and a really good finish by Cengiz Under because it was a hard decision to miss, and I think he did. We'll come on to it in a bit, but it was a good finish, and Maddison deserved a lot of praise as well.
Yeah, I think Madison in itself, like he has really stepped up his game, and I think I said this last time we were speaking. Madison has been seeing the ball and really seeing play in like a slow motion mentality. He's been able to take that extra breath, kind of like how I mentioned with Barnes, I think previously as well, where he's been able to see the pitch, in a more clear and concise, manner, and he's been really able to capitalize off that. He, like I said, he takes that extra step and he passes it over, makes the play that he needs to do. Where I think even last year he was, he was rushing. And I believe, if I'm correct by the stats, he's 1 assist shy of tying his totals from last year. So he's just on a completely new level than he was even last year, especially coming back from injury.
Yeah, I think towards the end of last year, I think he had a goal in that amazing goal against Newcastle, and I don't think he actually scored for the rest of the season. I think we will talk about it on the chat before, but he's stepping up, and he's got 4 goals in 4 games, which is really, really impressive as well. And obviously the Tillemans penalty, he was going for it, he was winning it, and I think one thing I wanted to touch on, I think people didn't touch on as much, but the link up between, I know Pereira's just come back into the team, and he's still getting there, and you saw his literal world-class quality today. Again, it was against the Brentford side, and he is still building into it. But there seems to be like a telepathy between Tillemans and Pereira, where he goes, right, I'm going to set off, and Tillemans knows exactly where he is and will put a ball straight into him. And I thought that was amazing today.
Yeah, and especially with Pereira not being, uh, especially with him being out for so long. I think that's something else you really need to think about because, I think one of the things that I've always focused on is that, it takes time to develop a chemistry like that. And they had chemistry prior, but like when you haven't played in almost a year, that chemistry, fizzles out.
Mhm.
So the fact that they've been able to keep that chemistry strong and is a sight to see. Because it's just like Tielemans has it and he's going to pass it over to Pereira and it's not even a question, which is truly remarkable in a sense, especially when bringing up the fact that Pereira has been out for so long.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just on that today, how do you think that Pereira did as well? Because obviously we're just saying he's coming back from it, but again, there was sparks of absolute world class performance today.
I was quite happy with his performance. I think I've separated the fact that I'm not as highly critical with a player when they're coming back from injury, because you want to expect the best, but you also know that when you're coming back from an injury of that caliber, um, it's gonna take time. And there's no question, and there's no doubt in my mind that Ricardo is going to come back, and he's going to be world class yet again. And like you said, we saw sparks today, and I was quite pleased with his performance. You know, I think you just got to give him that little bit of extra time. And I think once he starts gaining that confidence back and start gaining more and more of that confidence, Rogers is going to have one hell of a time trying to decide who he's going to slot in because I think it's going to be quite difficult to choose.
Yeah, definitely. And just two other people that are vying for them first team positions as well, because at the moment they're not looking like they're going to get in. Is Daniel Amate and Soyuncu again played pretty well today. In the first half was a little bit more shaky, but they definitely solidified that the second half. But they're definitely tapping up the door. And today, I don't think they had too much to do, but what they did, they executed brilliantly.
Yeah, and like you know what, this is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
Because like you have Soyuncu, and he's in a starting position in any Premier League team, and that's the thing. And the fact that you have him sitting on the bench is one thing, and he's knocking on the door, but you're not going to budge Fafana or Evans. It's just not going to happen, which is a shame because I'm a huge Soyuncu fan, really am. And you got to give credit to Amarty as well. He did have that little blunder. He did have a few blunders in the first half, but you also have to consider the fact that he's played very limited amount of football over the last 2 years, I
Mm.
would say. And he's really coming into games and he's really giving it his all. And he's really when you see the amount of injuries he's had, you'd expect a player to be more standoffish, just because of the types of injuries he's had. But he's been in there, he's been in the mud, doing the dirty work, and I'd say most of the time he's coming out and winning those battles.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree there. I think that some of the things that he does is he's getting himself in positions and he's not trying anything rash because he's solid. And when you need a player that, again, as you were saying, I think he got injured in 2018 and he has really not played many games since. But if you look at the example of the Man City game where he came in and the Arsenal game in the cup, in the EFL Cup where we got knocked out, where we had those positions and he just slotted in and just took it. And he's a really underrated player of the squad as well. And I think the future is bright for them just as a team player, which I think this adds into the fact that we've got a real squad now rather than just a first team 11.
Yeah, because you have that opportunity to choose who you want to play in certain matches. Because I think most times, last season or even in 2018, if you're in the FA Cup playing a match against, Brentford or Stoke, or, you're probably looking at starting the same squad that you would be playing in the Prem. Whereas here you're like, okay, we can give Ndidi a break. We'll bring in Mendy. Oh, well, Vardy's injured. Okay, well, we're going to put Perez in. Um, the fact that you could rest James Justin, it's his first time that he's actually rested this season, which is remarkable to even say, and slot in Ricardo. like, like the way that you put it is perfect. This team, it's a squad. The depth of this squad is deep. And, I think it's only going to improve more, not even, this season it's going to improve, but I think even like when we look at games next season, with the likes of Dewsbury Hall coming back from loan
Yeah.
and, other players that you might pick up in the, in the summer transfer window, it just shows you that this team is completely different from what we've seen over the last few years. And we've also been dealing with injuries. We have Vardy and Pratt both injured.
Yeah, it's Vardy and Pratt and Morgan. I know Morgan's not getting near the first team, but still at the moment he is injured. And one thing I want to pick up on, obviously Dewsbury Hall playing really well, scored a couple of goals. He's been ripping up for Luton. Again, I watched a second half performance of Luton versus Chelsea. Again, Chelsea were the better side. I think they won 4-1, 3-1 in the end. And the fact that, but Dewsbury Hall played really well. So I think if we were hypercritical of this team, Tielemans is probably the point where you've got one player in that position that can play that holding midfield, play the balls across. And I think because we've left Dewsbury Hall on loan, give him a year, bring him back into the squad, set him as an not the player, an understudy for Tielemans, let him learn the trade, just as James Justin has done. I think we could really take off. Another thing I just wanted to touch on Tielemans is that Tielemans had the captain's armband today, which I was actually quite surprised at. But then I thought, hang on, who else really is there to have the armband? But I think that was really deserving.
Yeah, and I think what I've watched over the last, I would say the last season and a half, is that he's a quiet leader. I think he really does lead in a quiet way, but there's nothing wrong with that. And I think he even does that when he plays on the Belgian squad during international games. I think it was completely deserved for him to wear the captain's armband. And like I said, he's more of a quiet leader, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think sometimes you need that. And it gives him the opportunity to, develop those leadership qualities even more. And that's quite important when you're looking at, how long is he going to be on the squad? And, moving forward, you're going to have to probably start wondering, maybe in a few years, when Casper gets older and, Vardy's no longer there and Evans is older, who's going to lead this team? And, I think Tielemans is a great opportunity and a great option if that's where we're going moving forward in the next few years.
And yeah, I totally agree there. And it's something that I'm really looking forward to as this squad and how they're building towards that. One player I wanted to touch on that was, I'm not sure. I'll just open the floor to you. Ozzy Perez today. Obviously, Vardy's out. We've had that long injury. I think Twitter's been absolutely bawling its eyes out over the 2 weeks period. And you're thinking 2 to 3 weeks. It's not great. It's not perfect. However, it is what it is. We expected this from Jamie Vardy a little bit. He's going to have more time out. Ozzy Perez as a number, as that kind of number 9. What are your thoughts?
I would take him over Nacho. And the fact that I'm saying that is it's hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because Perez plays better in a center attacking forward position. And he's useless on the wing. But I don't know if he's a good number 9. But at the same time, you have no other options, because Rodgers isn't going to play Nacho. It's just not going to happen. So, and you're not going to go out and look for someone on loan to take in and be like, hey, by the way, you're going to play 2 weeks, as our number 9. And then, when Vardy comes back, you're on the bench. Like, that's just not going to happen. So, I was looking at the schedule and I was looking at who we're playing, with Perez in that position, I have no issue with it, because you still have players like Barnes, Madison, Tielemans, Albrighton / Under who can deliver if Perez is really there, because it's been happening even with Vardy when he hasn't been fully there. He has players surrounding him that can get the job done. That's my take, because Nacho he's not reliable.
No, I
would trust Perez more at this point.
Yeah, I trust Perez as well. However, I think playing him as a lone striker just doesn't seem, he looks lost, and trying to shoehorn Maddison in and Perez in, them two play in a very similar position, and we've seen and on current form, Perez does deserve to be in the team over Nacho. He's done more in terms of setting up opportunities, taking opportunities. So I totally get it there. But my point is, in that position, I think he's best in a 4-3-3. Play him in the middle, play under, play Barnes either side. So he's looking, as soon as he gets the ball, he looks up and he goes, right, who's running it past me? Because you saw today, Under's got a lot of pace. We knew it. But I think today, with him and Barnes, I was expecting a lot more going forward. And in the first half, it wasn't quite there. I think in the second half, Barnes dropped off a little bit and Under took the wheel a little bit more. And maybe that was because of Brentford and how they marked certain players out of the game as well. But that's the way I would utilize him. However, when you're playing Maddison and Perez in the team together, it just seems a bit disjointed. Again, Maddison really stepped up, and I think he deserves man of the match today. However, just with that a little bit, there needs to. It's almost as if you play like a 4. So you play Maddison, Perez, Under, and Barnes, but then you need somebody up top, and there's just something missing. And without Jamie Vardy, I think even against the Brentford team, you could tell there was something there was something just lacking today. That's somebody that's going to explode into the box and put the ball away.
Yeah, and like it's hard because like you're in this weird position where you know you're not going to bring anybody in, and you know Vardy won't be out long term. He's out for like a relatively short period of time, which is great. Because you know at that age there's quite a concern about length of recovery time, but you hit the nail right on the head when it comes to, you know, it's kind of awkward putting Perez and Maddison in, and you know they pretty much play the same role in a sense, and you know it does look messy. Now this could just be, you know, Rogers kind of playing around with formation right now to see, you know, this might be that perfect game to be like, okay, let's see how this looks, and we could completely see a different formation and, you know, tactics moving forward for the next few matches before Vardy gets back, because, you know, I think that's where you might see Rogers sit down and be like, okay, this didn't really work today. What can we do to make it work?
Yeah, and a player that normally would come in and help with that running would be Dennis Pratt. But obviously, he's out injured for a long time as well, so that doesn't help things a little bit as well. But I don't want to complain too much because it was a good performance, and overall, I think we'll take that confidence into the next Everton game.
Yeah, and you know, I think you just got to take each game as they come. I think that's such a key thing to do. Whereas, you know, there's one of the biggest things you got to look at, because
Sorry about that. It was a bit of technical difficulty, but we managed to figure it out. Alex is back. And yeah, just your thoughts on Everton, the upcoming game on Wednesday, Alex.
I think it's going to be a good match. I think one of the biggest things you need to look at is that, you know, the way that Brentford play to how Everton play are completely different. So the tactics will change. You know, the formation might change. Lineup, you will definitely see changes in the lineup. You know, I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a quite good game. You know, it might be a little different with Vardy out, but I think with the squad we have and the depth that we have, I don't think there's going to be any issue, and I think it will be an exciting game to watch from start to finish.
Yeah, I agree. I'm hoping it is, because the 2-0 loss that we had last time, it was kind of unlucky. We did play okay. However, in this new form now, but we've got Jamie Vardy at the team. So there's this balance we've got to play. But it will be a good test for us because Ancelotti is a world-class manager. And we saw that last time for the way he set up the team. However, I think Allen is out and Decore is out, which are the two problems that shut down everything. So there is a little bit of play to do. So if we can improve on the 2-0 and if we could get a draw, that would still be acceptable in my opinion. So yeah, thank you for Alex for joining once again. We've got a few videos coming out. Obviously, we'll be back on Wednesday for the chat. I'm releasing some of the smaller clips. You've probably seen them earlier in the chat as well. So be really interesting to know what you think of that. We're trying to release little content here and there. So thank you everybody for watching the video. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you all on Wednesday. So goodbye.